Okay, welcome. I'm Taylor Sharp. This is the Dallas Filemaker Pro user group for May 2025. We're glad to have everybody here. We got a lot of people in person in the room, and we got some people virtually. We're glad to have all of you on the virtual side too. We have a big presentation by a couple of the Harmonic guys. So Matt and Paul are going to give us an AI presentation. Obviously, AI is the big topic of everything going on right now. So we are going to do some learning. I hope to learn some stuff on it too.
All right. Good morning. Thanks for joining us locally and remotely. So FileMaker and AI, I don't know if you're like me. I have felt like over the course of the last year, I'm being left in the dust. They're AI this, AI that, AI all the time. And I've really struggled to find what is the right point to engage. How do I do something relevant and useful for my customers? How do I do it in a careful and measured fashion that actually returns value? And I think based on my time at Engage this year, there was a lot of exciting things that were talked about. Now is the time, for me at least, and for the folks on my team, and I think for a lot of us, now is the time to engage. Claris has been taking a very measured approach. Some people might look at that and say they've been slow. That is one way to read it. But they've been taking a very measured approach to what they have put in market. And I think as a business owner and as someone who works with businesses that have a lot of concern and liabilities around data, which is the province of FileMaker, a measured approach is warranted. We need to be careful what we do with this stuff, right? Now, Claris has announced, they have announced when the next version of FileMaker is coming out. It's in July. So Claris FileMaker 2025, which will have an entirely different internal version, just to keep things confusing. But Claris FileMaker 2025 is coming out in July, and it is going to have a whole bunch more cool AI stuff in it that we're not going to talk about at the moment, because it's not in market yet. But the version of Claris FileMaker that is in market has some very important AI features, and they're not insert from URL. Almost every session and topic that I've heard on FileMaker and AI over the course of the past year has been, you start with insert from URL, and then you do everything outside of FileMaker, and then you get your result back. Well, okay, how is that anything to do with AI and FileMaker, right? Yeah, okay, that's a hook I can use to interact with AI, with FileMaker, but that's not really AI in FileMaker, right? That's just an external call. And then it means I got to understand the APIs. They keep changing because this stuff is moving along at light speed. I've got to interact with the data. I've got to transform it. I've got to ask the question right. I've got to get the response correctly. So that certainly is an important tool, but it's not very FileMaker-y. And so it's not what we're going to talk about today. Right? The province of today's conversation is, what can we do with the in-market version of FileMaker using the built-in tools that we have right now? And it's an important topic because the next version of FileMaker builds on that. It doesn't replace it. They're not taking what we can do in market today and going, well, that was cool, but now we're going to do a different thing. They're adding to it. So the big thing that we can do right now is called Semantic Search. And so today's topic is going to be Paul walking us through an integration with a public LLM and doing semantic search. And let's just say this is the easy choice. Public LLMs are powerful. Right now, they're relatively cheap, and they're fun to play with. And that's a great option if what you're trying to do is get your feet wet and get started and you're not using your customers' data. However, I have a lot of customers who, if I ship one speck of their data to a public LLM, I am immediately in violation of a lot of things I don't want to be in violation of. And my customers have way bigger law firms than I do. So, and reading the news, I think the world's kind of catching up to and figuring this out as well, right? I start to see stories about, don't ask ChatGPT a question where you're including personal information that you might not want to come back to bite you. In fact, ChatGPT, in their terms and conditions, they expressly tell you not to send them private information, right? So the real opportunity is, how can we also interact with a private LLM, with an LLM that is in a sandbox, that isn't putting our information out there, that's not feeding it into some kind of a learning model that outside of our control, right? That's what lets us unlock the power of some of this stuff for our customers, where they have these kinds of security concerns. And so we're also going to look at that today. And we're going to try to do it in as FileMaker-y a way as possible, in the sense that you don't have to hire a web team. You don't have to have a Python guru on staff. We did a presentation where we did a local LLM months ago, but I have a lot of resources to make that happen. And I couldn't have done it. Some guys on my team could. But again, that's not a very FileMaker solution to this. So today, Matt is going to help us look at an option that lets us run a local LLM on our machine with FileMaker using the built-in FileMaker tools, the built-in FileMaker script steps, and do some of these same things safely and privately.
We're going to show you how easy Claris has made integrating with AI. I am not the AI genius. I should call out the names of a few people who've led me to where I've gotten. People like Chris Ippolite, Ronnie Rios, a couple of people in the room who presented on this topic last year, Eric Clark and Randy Crawley. These are all people who've gone ahead of me. I'm here today to show you that it's easy. That was something that when Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, they said, you didn't do any big deal. Anybody could have done that. Any sailor could have sailed in a straight line long enough and achieved what you did. And he said, most things are easy when somebody shows you how. So I've been shown how. Now I'm going to show you how easy it is to make your FileMaker talk to AI. That is to make your data more accessible. So this file that I'm hoping you downloaded, that I've got up on my screen, and this is on the big screens in the room, right? Okay. This file is simply the text of The Wizard of Oz and its first sequel, The Land of Oz. So I've broken this up into 248 records. And if I want to know something about this story in a traditional FileMaker way, I could just go to Find Mode and put in something like, who made the Scarecrow? And FileMaker is going to say, oh, look, it's giving me a couple of answers. These do not answer my question. I'm actually surprised it returned anything, because that phrase doesn't appear in the book. But it's just trying to pick out some of the words. This is not a responsive answer. But what if I could actually get the computer to know what I mean? For years, this has been my complaint about computers. If you put in a wrong URL, if you misspell something in a FileMaker search, you get a 404 error. You get something, oh, that's wrong. The computer doesn't just know what you mean. In the 2025, the computer can now just know what you really meant. It can figure it out for itself. So what if I put that here and I say, if I put in who made the Scarecrow here and ask the question, I can get an answer. The Scarecrow was made by a farmer who painted his face and assembled his body, arms, and legs. The farmer then carried the Scarecrow to the cornfield and set him up on a tall stick. That's how the Scarecrow got there. It's right in the book. But this is FileMaker answering a question about my data. Now, it's also returned 5 records. out of this 248. And in the old days, with just semantic search, I would have to search through these 5 records and figure it out. And here's the answer in the 5th record, the description of how the scarecrow is made. But we've gotten to the point, we've taken it to the one step further to where we can take those records, synthesize them, present them to the AI, and get an actual answer to the question, not just find results. So today we're going to show you how we did that. The file you have, this FMPug May 2025 file, has a bunch of scripts in it, and the 3 most important ones are blank. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you what I spent 6 hours learning on training day at Claris Engage last month. So open your file and get your Cohere API key ready. We're going to click on the little sprocket in the upper right, and we're going to get our settings. And I want you to copy and paste your Cohere API key into where it says public LLM API. So if you haven't already done that, please do that. And this is what lets the LLM, what lets Cohere know, yes, this is me. When you hit the X, it's then going to populate a global field with your API. So now there's going to be an API value there. I told you I wasn't the genius of API. Claris's motto has always been, we make modern technology available to everyone. So now that we've got an API key in there, so we're going to open the configure AI account script, which of course is blank in your copy of the file. We're going to go and scroll down in commands on the right. And down here, right under Windows and Files and Accounts is the new Artificial Intelligence folder for script commands. This is new in the latest version of FileMaker. This is why you have to have the latest version of FileMaker. And we're going to simply double-click Configure AI Account. We're going to name our account just simply Sample Account. And this is where we're setting the account name. The model provider defaults to OpenAI, but we're going to change that to Cohere. But you see, we can also do custom, and that can mean a local LLM, where, like Steve was talking about, you're not uploading your data to the cloud. Matt's going to show us that soon. For now, we're going to choose Cohere. And for the API key, we're just going to put in admin API_G. That's our script. Once we do that, we're talking to the AI. Now, as you may or may not already be aware, to do this kind of semantic searching, that is to say the kind of search where FileMaker will simply return the records that best match your question, we're going to need to format our data in a way that the AI can work with. And that's called embedding. So we're going to go to the second script, embedding details in found set. And we're going to choose this command, insert embedding in found set. Now this one's a little more complicated, but not very. Now I'm going to go to my script here so that I can see how I did this the first time. I've got a little navigation here that's not absolutely necessary. So let's just jump to this step here. We're going to do insert embedding in found set. And our account name, just like we set it up already, is sample account. Now, when I did this with Chris, he had us run the configure AI account script first. But that meant every time we ran the script, it was resetting up the configure AI account. In fact, that will be persistent over the course of a session. So I've set the onOpen script to run that configure AI account script. But the first time we do it, we'll go ahead and run it explicitly. So our embedding model is already set up in your file. And the one I chose is this Embed English Lite v3.0. That's a not very heavy embedding script. There's so much to know about embedding scripts, and there's way outside the scope of this presentation. But the different embedding models. But this one is kind of light, which is to say it's not going to be the biggest, it's not going to take the most tokens, it's not going to be the most intense, and hopefully it won't be too draining on our network here when you run your script. So that's already preset in your file. So the embedding model is simply here. Again, admin, and we're going to choose model embedding. Ah, yes, right. So that's a repeating field. And I've set that up to use a particular repetition. And that's inside brackets, the admin LLM switch field. And I'll show you where that is. That's this field right here. So I'm using this to determine for several script steps, which value am I grabbing? And so when we get to the local LLM, we'll be able to just flip back and forth by the time we're done to grab either this model for the Cohere or this model for the LM Studio. All right, so that's what we need to do there. What else is here? Yeah.
Source field.
What's that?
Your source field.
Ah, yes, the source field. What else is got? Embedding model, admins. Okay, yes. All right. So then I need to ask, it wants to know, what am I sending to the AI to get embeddings back? And for that, we're going to do the field simply called text in the story table. And then where do we want to put it? We're going to put it in the text embedding public field. And you can replace target contents or not. What that does is if there's already something in the field, it will replace it if you've chosen that. But if you only want to populate the records that are not populated already, you could leave that unchecked. And then there are any number of parameters you can put with this. We're not going to use this right now. So yours should look like this: account name, sample account, embedding model, admin model embedding, and in brackets, admin LM switch. For the source field, we have the story text field. For the target field, we have the story text embedding public, and I chose to replace target contents. But in your file, there are no embeddings, so it won't be replacing anything. It'll simply be populating it. Let's try running these two scripts. Go ahead first and run your configure AI account script. And then go ahead and run your embedding details in found set script. You should see some action going on when you run that. Anybody got stuff? Oh, Steve's got a thumbs up.
Trial rate, token rate limit.
Oh, have you been playing around with your token already? Did you exceed the limit on your trial?
100,000 tokens per minute.
I'm going to turn off replace target.
Yeah, turn off replace. And try again. Scroll to your last record and see, do I have stuff in that field? It's this left-hand field right here. So try again in like 1 minute, I think is what it's looking at, is how many per minute you can do. That's your free Cohere account, yep.
You get what you pay for?
Essentially, yeah. So I went back and forth doing this over and over again so much that I actually went and got a paid account. So I wonder if I will have that problem if I run the script. Yeah, I got it. All 248 records. There we go. By the way, as you play with this file, the little logo up in the upper left will give you kind of a reset. It will clear your search bar. It will put you back on the first record. It will sort the records properly, do full found set again. So now that we've got a configured the AI account and we've got embedding files, now we're ready to compare what we put in the search bar with what's in the embedding file. That's called semantic search. Now, semantic search will return a numeric value called a cosine, what is it, cosine similarity? What is that? Is that right? Okay. And that's going to fall within a range of -1 to 1. And so 1 is a perfect match, and -1 is absolutely nothing in common. So most of the time it's going to be some kind of decimal. Hopefully it'll be a positive number. And that's what it returns. It returns what record numbers and what the cosine similarity is. So let's go into the perform semantic find script. And once again, we're here on the right. In our list of AI commands, we've got perform semantic find. We're going to query by natural language because that's what we're putting in the search field. Account name is still sample account. Embedding model is that same embedding model. So it's on the admin and it's model embedding. And here again, we're just using that field to pick which of the embedding fields we're using. What text are we using? We're going to use the admin search field. And you can make it search all the records in the database, or you can search a set of found records. This is relevant because if you've got a large number of records, if you've got maybe thousands or even hundreds of thousands of records and you're searching the text on them, you may know a way to limit the number that you want to send to the AI. The example Chris Ippolite gave us was meeting notes. And he had meeting notes that stretched over a couple of years. And so if, I want to check meetings for this year, you could do a simple find for get me everything from this year in FileMaker. And then now from this set, what have we got that answers this question, whatever your question is? So that's a good way to optimize your semantic search, is to limit it to the current found set. For our purposes, we'll keep it on all records. And there's a number of things here. So I've got my set of records. Here's all records. My target field is, what did I do? What did I do in the other file? What's that, Brian?
I think it's probably
The embedding, text embedding public. All right, so this is where are we getting the embedding values from? So it's text embedding public. My return count. So your return count will default to 10. It will return 10 records unless you tell it something different. So for our purposes today, let's keep it to something low. Let's set it to 5. But it's going to return the top, in this case, it will return to me the top 5 best matches. So it won't find everything that kind of sort of matches. It will just give me the top 5 best ones. You can also set a condition on what cosine similarity. You can say, all right, find me everything greater than 0.5 or 0.75, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So you can set a range of cosine similarities that you want. I'm going to leave this one blank today. What did I do with that? Cosine similarity value. We're going to leave that blank. And then save result. I like to put it in a variable. I got $$ result to save the result.
Okay.
Alternately, you could put it in a field. My script actually does that. I've got a set field. I'm just going to copy that over. So I put in a set field to display to a field called admin display results, and I'm dropping that result in a JSON format elements function. You don't have to do that. I'm doing it so I can show you something here later. Is everybody up to speed? This is really easy, isn't it? You guys are FileMaker developers. We got one script that's one step, another script that's one step, another script that's 2 steps. This is not hard stuff. This is like sailing west for a long time and finding a whole new continent. All right, so let me get the right file. Now we've done it. So now we're going to put in some kind of search criteria. Let me throw in, how did Dorothy get to Oz? All right, so there we are. I've got a search criteria. When I click out of the field, it unhides my search button. This is going to run the perform semantic search script. I tap this. So now I've got my top 5 records by cosine similarity. And I've got the cosine similarity right here on the field, which is a cool detail I'll show you in a minute. So here she is. She's just arrived in Oz in this record. Here she's being told she has to go to the Emerald City. Here she's talking about going back to Kansas. And yeah, here's that done. So this doesn't really do a very good job of telling me about Dorothy getting to Oz. That's interesting. So this button here is just a popover, and it's going to show you what the actual return of the perform semantic find step is. And it's these records, the record ID and the similarity score for each one. And it returns just those records. It returns just those records and sorts them. So that's what I learned in 6 hours at Claris Engage, was how to do this, was how to get the connection, get the embeddings, do the semantic search. But then I think it was Steve suggested to me I should try to synthesize, or someone suggested to me, so I should try to synthesize all that. So I'm going to show you this script. I'm not going to make you build it. Here it is. This one is still only 26 steps. Who in this room is intimidated by the idea of, oh, you have to write a 26-step script? We're not going to. You could learn. This is all done for you. So all you have to do is go back to the semantic find step script and add perform script. And choose that one, synthesize response. And that part I've done for you. Now this is my 2025 final file. This is the same one you downloaded. I can click this, it grinds, and it gives me an answer. That's pretty cool. And Steve made it do the same thing. He's been following along.
Actually, it explained that Dorothy was from Kansas because I asked where Dorothy was from.
There you go. See, we're going to go even farther than that. So I've shown you what I learned in the Engage training day, which was the semantic search. I've shown you how we can then synthesize it to have the AI give you an actual answer to your question. Now Matt's going to show us how to configure a local LLM so that you don't have to send your data to the cloud. And then we'll come back to me and I'll show you how to hook the local LLM back to this FileMaker file.
All right, can you guys see my screen? The huge benefit of this is that it is local. You're not sending your information out over the interwebs, and It'll also is a kind of a free way to play around and try things and actually get behind the scenes and dial in some settings. The negative is that all of these models, with the exception of the embedding models, are just pretty beefy boys. They're all gigabytes in size, and so nothing we can do about that, but I'm going to walk through how we can get a local LLM running in a few minutes. I would say we're going to use the LLM Studio. And as Steve pointed out, the reason why we kind of centered at Harmonic on this particular package is it is kind of all under one roof, so to speak. You don't have to install Docker. You don't have to install multiple components. You don't have to get them to talk to each other. It's from a FileMaker developer standpoint, you don't want to have to spend a ton of time futzing around with a bunch of other stuff to make simple things work. So it is a simple tool. The other thing that is nice about it is that it uses OpenAI compatible endpoints, which means that the FileMaker built-in script steps will just work. So first order of business, if you haven't done so, is to go to lmstudio.ai and download LM Studio. It should be a pretty quick, I haven't had trouble downloading it, and it is only for Intel Macs, it's for Windows that run Intel and ARM, and it's for Linux boxes that run Intel. So it is a little limited, but for those of us with slightly modern hardware, it should be everything we need.
It's only for Apple Silicon Macs. You said it back.
Oh, I did. It's only for Apple Silicon Macs, Intel Windows, and ARM Windows, and Intel-based Linux. So hit that download button. It should basically be a really easy installer. It's very easy installer. Drop it in your applications folder. Should take a second. It's going to do something when you first load it up. It's going to suggest that you take a second and you download a model called DeepSeek R1 Distill Quinn. And so let's just go ahead and do that because we're going to use it in this demonstration, but it is also kind of a beefy boy. So it's going to take a couple of seconds to download if you haven't done so already. When it's done, it's going to ask you, do you want to load it? So I'm going to walk you through this initial chat screen just to kind of show you around the tool a little bit. A couple of things that I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to, at the bottom, and here, let me zoom in. I'm going to choose to be a developer. You can go through different levels of being a user, and just for simple chats, user is fine, but we're all developers here, so we're going to select the developer option. And when you're done and it's done downloading, it's going to ask you to load it. So you can either click on your dialog window that says load, or you can go up to the top search bar area and just pick that model out of the list. I've got a bunch of them. You should probably only have one or two, but we want to pick that DeepSeek R1, and it's going to take a second to load. One of the cool things about this app and in this window is that at the very bottom here, I'm going to zoom in again so you guys can see, it's being a good neighbor, and it's telling you how big of a hog it's being on your machine right now. So very little CPU, but it is in fact chewing up some RAM. And some of these models are 21 gig, some of these models are huge. We'll get into how you can make wise decisions about which models to use in just a second, but I wanted to show you that little part of the window so you can kind of keep an eye on how much memory you're using. Now that we've downloaded this DeepSeek model, we can create and start a chat. That's as simple as creating a chat here. You can also go up here and create a chat. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. It's going to open up a window that looks familiar to anyone that's used public-based AI models. It's just going to allow you to have a conversation with it. So I like to throw kind of silly questions at it first just to get a flavor of how the model is trained. And we're going to ask it, why is the sky blue? It's not going to ask the internet. It's going to consult its own built-in model. One of the things that I like about LLM Studio is that it's got this little thinking window. Now, DeepSeek is a thinking model, so it is going to have this feature. Not all models have this feature. But if you want to know what it's thinking, you can actually go up here and turn that little disclose button down and actually kind of read how it's processing that query. Hopefully, it won't spend too much time thinking about this. It spent 28 seconds for me, and it's going to give you an answer. And so, I like to throw kind of silly questions at it first just to get a flavor of how the model is trained. And we're going to ask it, why is the sky blue? It's not going to ask the internet. It's going to consult its own built-in model. One of the things that I like about LLM Studio is that it's got this little thinking window. Now, DeepSeek is a thinking model, so it is going to have this feature. Not all models have this feature. But if you want to know what it's thinking, you can actually go up here and turn that little disclose button down and actually kind of read how it's processing that query. Hopefully, it won't spend too much time thinking about this. It's spent 28 seconds for me. And so You can judge the quality of this answer against your public AIs. I think it's going to take longer to come up with the answer because it's local, and it might have some inaccuracies because it is only a 4 gig model. But it actually comes up with a pretty good answer. One of the things I also like about LM Studio, here's the bottom, is that you can actually get an idea of how well your particular model on this piece of hardware performed. This one moved at 24 tokens a second. It generated 1,000 tokens, and it has some stats that kind of help you, probably not day one be super useful, but as you start looking at models and start deciding which one you might want to use, that is some helpful information. A couple of other things I just want to introduce you to with this particular interface right here is that up in the corner, there's this little beaker looking icon for show settings. When you open that up, you can actually load some setting. You can tweak your settings. You can start to dial in how you want this local model to behave. You can put in things in a system prompt like only the example here is only answer in rhymes. You can say, please talk like a pirate. You can say, don't be silly. I mean, there's all kinds of the ways that you can prompt it. Most of the time, I would suggest that prompts are for specific use cases. For instance, if you're building a RAG, you might want your system prompt to say, only answer from the content provided to you in the RAG. Those are some things that you can do from a prompt standpoint. I'm not going to dive into all these settings because it would take a long time. Just know that there's a lot of tweaking that you can do. There's a lot of ways that you can make this model suit your purposes as you get familiar with it. That is the chat screen. I think what I'm going to jump into now is we need to load a second model. We need to load an embedding model. So I'm going to show you around that part of this tool. We're going to go down to the purple magnifying glass icon called Discover, and that's going to open up a search dialog area. And it's busy. It's got a bunch of suggestions here for things that you might like to try. It has information inside. If you've selected one of these models, it's got information that you can read about why you would choose this model versus another model. It's going to tell you information about its architecture. This is a Quinn-based model. It's going to tell you how many parameters. This is an enormous model. Obviously, 4 billion is much smaller than 235 billion, right? So for the purposes of a local model, you might want to choose something that isn't quite so gigantic. 4 billion is pretty nice. Within here, too, you've got the ability to choose quantization levels. And think about that almost like compression, or maybe think about that like as in how much information it has per token that you're going to want to send it. And the bigger the number, like Q8, the bigger the model is, the slower it works, but the more accurate its results are in general. So I typically don't mess around with things that are smaller than Q4 just because it's almost not worth it. But I also typically don't go above Q8 because Q8 is really bigger than that, is really for actually doing the training. So I tend in those directions. You'll have different mileage. One of the things we want to do before we get going with this tutorial is we want to download a model. And this is a small one, thankfully. We're going to do a search for Nomic. Nomic makes really good text embedding models. And they make them small, and so they pack a good punch, kind of a small size, high quality ratio. When you do a search for Nomic, you're going to get a gazillion results. The one at the top, most likely, is from the Nomic AI folks, and that's what we are going to pick here. Again, over to the side, you've got information about it. You're going to want to pull down on that pull-down menu. I picked Q4KM, and that is what I'm going to choose to run this rest of this the tutorial here, but you may actually have it already downloaded. Sometimes these LM Studio will pre-download Nomic 1.5 Q4KM for you. If that's the case, then you're ready to go. If not, it's going to give you this download option down here. You're going to want to click that and download it. In this case, it is 94 megabytes. It's really not very big. We should be able to get that downloaded to your machine pretty quick. One more area to look at before we can continue the tutorial. is the developer area. This is my favorite area. All right, it's a busy screen, and I'm going to try to walk through the components of this screen here as best as I can. Up here at the top, this kind of short area up here is the settings area, and basically what this is, how you want your API listener to run. Out of the box, it comes listening to port 1234. The tutorial that we've written is kind of dependent on 1234. If that doesn't work for you, you're going to need to change that port, but I haven't yet found a scenario in which 1234 was already taken. There are some basic settings here, which, again, I would love to dive into, but I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on. Other than that, the defaults seem to work just fine. They will work for this tutorial. As you get used to this tool, you may want to go and turn things off, like automatic loading or just-in-time loading. But for now, I think it's okay to leave those on. Next to that settings area, though, is this status stopped. This is going to actually turn on your API listener. So we want that to be running. As soon as you turn that on, your machine is now listening on port 1234. It's got up here this section that tells you what you're actually listening at, what your address is. If you click here, it will save that information to your clipboard, and you can dive back into FileMaker, and in your settings area, if it isn't already filled out for you, the local LLM endpoint, you can just paste that setting there, and that will allow FileMaker to talk to that local LLM. But before we do that, before we get too far down the road, I want to point out a couple of more things about this particular interface. What you've got in this section here, beneath where we were just at, is where it is a list of what models you have loaded. And this is important because FileMaker is going to want to talk to a loaded model. We can see that the DeepSeek is loaded from how much we were playing with it before. We're going to want to load that Nomic model, though. If you go and you pull down the pull-down menu, it looks like the search bar area at the top center. You're going to want to find your Nomic embed text 1.5 Q4KM, if that's the one you downloaded, and just select it. And by selecting it, it's going to load it into memory, just like that. Something that's kind of nifty, again, if you are paying attention to your system resource usage, that jumped by just a little bit because you loaded a new model. Another thing to note is that as you select the model, you get information off over to your right-hand side. You can, again, as we discussed, dial in how you want that model to behave for the API calls that it's going to receive. I'm not going to go into detail here, but there's a lot you can do, especially when it comes to things like context length, and how much you offload to the GPU for those folks that have a GPU. There's some nifty things you can do in there. Suffice it to say, as you select your model, this is where you would set up that information. As you select your next model, this is where you'll set up your information. What you're going to want to do for the tutorial is select your Nomic model, and in the section called API usage, you are going to want to highlight, I highlighted the wrong thing. You're going to want to highlight the name of the model. Mine has a little bit of a different ending on it. Yours should just say text embedding Nomic embed text dash v 1.5. Mine's got a little bit extra on it, but you're going to want to copy that into your clipboard. And again, in FileMaker,
There's a copy button up here too.
that may be, yes, that may be, they've made this UI easy to use, didn't they? You're going to want to go into your little status area over here, and you're going to want to paste in your model embedding local field. You're going to want to paste the name of that model. We've tried to pre-populate it for you, but if you picked a different thing, then you'll have to make sure that's the same. One more thing that I think is super fun. In the bottom here, you've got this section that you can disclose called developer logs. This is super helpful because if you click a button and you say, hey, I don't think it's working, you can always go to the developer logs area and it's going to tell you what it's up to. And if you are really adventuresome, you can go to the ellipsis area here and you could choose verbose logging, which gives you a lot more detail about whether it's running, whether or not you have an error. It will give you a lot more detail about the error that you're having, and so you can debug really well with this. I love this tool for this reason. Otherwise, I have to go into terminal and follow some file that is buried somewhere in my library folder, and it's just not fun. So this is for the FileMaker folks in the crowd, I think this is a great tool to use for doing local models. So with that in mind, we have, I think, the stage set. If your status is running and your models are loaded, the stage is set to jump back over to FileMaker Pro and set it up to talk to that local LLM, which I'm going to have Paul walk you through the rest of that tutorial.
Think of that line in Hamilton, after all the emotion, and Jefferson says, "Can we get back to politics now?" I imagine all the FileMaker guys are like, "Can we get back to FileMaker now?" Yes, we're back to FileMaker. All right. So at this point, you should have in your settings all of these fields filled in, either prior by me or populated them yourself. So then we're going to get back into your Configure AI account. And we're going to make it more complicated. So I'm going to put these two up side by side, because we're going to take this one step and make it into this. So the first thing we want to know, we want to be able to go back and forth without worrying about it from public to local. So we're going to throw in an if statement, and we're going to test whether the LLM switch equals 1. So I can actually walk through that. If it's 1, that means it's local. So we'll do the one we've already got. Otherwise, throw in an else. I'm going to copy this. And all I'm going to change, because we're keeping the same account name, I'm going to change the provider to custom. And now it no longer wants the API key.
That is something I forgot to mention. When you were talking to LM Studio, you do not need an API key. You can also configure your LM Studio to be talked to over a network, in which case you can assign it an API key. But out of the box, no API key, easy peasy.
But we do need the local endpoint now. So that's over here. It's in the admin table, local endpoint. That's where you pasted it. And that's just this HTTP 127.0.1. Yeah. Or that's what it is in mine. So the field is the admin local endpoint field. Then also in mine, I set up, let me minimize that. We'll bring it back. I also, just for the sake of it, enabled local AI call logging. Set AI call logging. There we go. You can set it to on. You can make it verbose or not. You can truncate messages or not. And you can assign it a file name. Like something like that. Put it in quotes. And every time it touches the AI and starts calling back and forth, it will log your calls. What did it send? What did it get back? All that. And it's just creating a log file in your FileMaker folder.
Should name it Kenny Log.
Kenny login, yeah. I saw that meme the other day. I changed all my passwords to Kenny, so now I'll have all Kenny logins. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. All right. So that's our configure AI script. Again, still pretty simple. Got if this, then that, otherwise the other. So we still have to do embedding. The local is going to give us different embedding files than Cohere did. So let's go look and see what I did in my other one. Again, we've got it's an if statement. Do it one way or do it the other way. So I for my own purposes, for this purpose, wanted to make sure I was on the right layout. Because I've been playing back and forth, and every once in a while I would trigger it from an admin layout and it wouldn't do the right thing. So I made it force me onto the right layout, and then show all records. But again, you can choose to do it on a given found set of records. You can even choose to do it with a different script step. You can just do this insert embedding, and we'll do it one record at a time. And under alternatives folder here, I've got actually a loop where it does that, where it loops through and tests to see is the token count too high. So here we're showing all records. At this point, we need our if statement. Test to see if it's public or local. I've arbitrarily assigned one to public. Else. Again, I'm going to copy that. And what changes did I make? So sample amount, embedding model is, don't need to change embedding model because it's basically looking at the LLM switch field.
Target field.
Changes. Text embedding local. And I tried, it would not let me make that text embedding field a repeating field. Otherwise, I could have done it with the very same command. All right. So I've got one comment here that I didn't copy over. Otherwise, this is the same script. Great. So having done that, if you followed along, you should be able to run your Configure AI account to set it up for the local LLM. Oh yeah, I just need to go over here and do this. When you make this change, it will run it and change it to local LLM. You see, I've made that switch. Now I should be able to run this embedding script. Now, if I bring up my LM Studio, you should see, yeah, here's stuff going on. It's loading the model. And then you start to see activity. So much fun to look at it in LM Studio and see everything going by. It's inserting the records. The LM Studio does run a little slower than your public LLM, but here's my embedding files. And this time we shouldn't be getting errors like, oh, you've used too many tokens. So my perform semantic find. Again, I made it a little more complicated. So this perform find in my version just does a search for everything that has something in the embedding field and returns an error if it's not there. Otherwise, we're just checking to see, once again, what are we set to? Keep clicking on that. Once again, I'm going to copy and paste my perform semantic find script. And again, this time we're going to make just a few changes. Admin search, LLM switch, yeah, okay. Got the right embedding model, yeah. Just the target field. That's the only thing I have to change. Let me comment this out so we can see it just do the semantic find. Close it in on the end of this presentation. Here we are. There we go. So anybody know that the lands of Oz are color-coded? There we go. I got 5 records. Right here on the first one, he tells her blue is the color of the Munchkins. Nice job. Right there on the first record. Once again, I've still got the same results. This time, though, they're coming from the local LLM. It didn't send anything. So if I uncomment this and ask it to give me the synthesized answer, again, it does take a little longer. What's going on with this? I'm going to reset that. There it goes. You see something happening down there? The window underneath. And there it is. Now, this model, like Matt was saying, it has the think mode. It returns that thinking process in the result. But the final answer is right here. The Munchkins like the color blue. And what it's returning is a JSON blob, of course, and I'm just picking out the right part of it to stick in the custom dialog. So the only thing we changed between the two perform semantic find steps was the target field. Text embedding local versus text embedding public. So on your file.
So one of the things that LM Studio doesn't really even do is give you information about how well something has matched. So I just threw into this a third table and layout called comparisons. And the reason why I did that is because I want to see how well one model compares to another model in terms of how well it matches terms. And so using the local LLM, we've got a text field up here where we can put a text string. I'm going to take apples. It's going to immediately, and you saw the log back there move, embed that query. If you go down to the bottom and you add another search term, it's going to, as you toggle out of that field, embed that, and it's going to do the math and say how well do these things compare. And yet, apparently you can compare apples to oranges, and while they're not a perfect one, closer than you'd think. You can use this tool to play with not just terms like this to help you maybe dial in searches a little bit better. But you can also, as you download potentially different nomic quantizations or different embedding texts, you can actually change your embedding model here and try different. The plus button up in the corner is going to allow you to create and store results. And you can try to see which quantizations or which models do a better job for your purposes. We were trying the other day to throw a wrench at it. Like, here's a popular wrench. Sometimes models don't like capitalizations and they will give you a different score. This one's pretty much a 1, so it does see that's the same thing. But then you kind of wonder what kind of thinking this particular model is doing. And it doesn't think so favorably about the comparison of apples and robots. But however, you might try a different search term up here and see, okay, a little bit better. Not as much as I would think, right? So if you're going to do science fiction, I would highly not recommend texting Nomic 1.5. But again, this is kind of a playground. It's free of charge. I threw it on here so you guys can play with it. You will note that, of course, when you go to the public LLMs and you start doing these comparisons, all of these scores are higher because those models are frickin' enormous and they have spent a ton of money on them and they have spent a lot of time training them. part of the whole deal of getting things local is we're going to have to kind of, as FileMaker developers doing LLM, get good at training models and figuring out what that means and training them for a purpose. And so training a model to do all things for all people, nobody's got the budget and time for that. Training a model to look at actuarial tables to give you semantic search results should be easier. Someone probably has actually already found that model and spent some time training it, and you can probably just download it. So anyway, that's kind of how this thing rolls.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining the remote meeting. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube. You can be somebody who brings AI to your clients. And this is a great way to begin it. This is in the classic tradition of Claris, making this sort of thing accessible to everybody.
All right.